My mother looked me straight in the eye and said they could only afford one ticket to my sister's graduation ceremony. 24 hours later, I discovered she had purchased two first-class plane tickets, booked a luxury hotel suite, and planned a week-long celebration trip. The kicker. She told my sister I was too busy with work to attend. While they were sipping champagne in Seattle, I was loading my belongings into a U-Haul, finally understanding that some family members see you as expendable. Hey everyone watching from around the world. Before we dive into this family drama that completely shattered my understanding of unconditional love, drop a comment letting me know where you are tuning in from. If this story about family betrayal and the revenge that followed resonates with you, smash that like button and subscribe because trust me, this journey gets wild. My name is Evangeline, and I had always been the family peacekeeper, the one who believed blood was thicker than water. That belief crumbled faster than a house of cards when I started digging into what really happened during my sister Madison's graduation weekend. It began 3 months earlier when Mom called with her usual dramatic flair. Evangeline, honey, I have some unfortunate news about Madison's graduation from law school. Her voice carried that particular tone she used when delivering bad news she wanted me to accept without question. Your father and I can only afford to send one family member to Seattle for the ceremony. You know how expensive flights are these days, and with the hotel costs. She let the sentence trail off, waiting for me to volunteer to step aside. I felt my heart sink, but I understood financial struggles. Dad had been between jobs for months, and I knew they were tightening their belts. Of course, Mom. Madison should have family there for such an important day. I can watch the live stream from home. You are such a good sister, Mom said, her relief evident. Madison will be so grateful to know you understand. The graduation came and went. I spent that Saturday alone in my apartment watching my sister's ceremony on my laptop while eating takeout Chinese food. Social media remained suspiciously quiet from their end, which I found odd since Mom usually documented every family milestone extensively. 2 weeks later, everything changed during what should have been a routine visit to help Dad with yard work. I was in his home office looking for the hedge trimmer manual when I accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. As I bent to collect them, a hotel receipt fluttered to the ground. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel, Presidential Suite. 3 nights. $4,000. My hands trembled as I read the details. This was not some budget accommodation for a struggling family making sacrifices. I kept searching through the scattered papers, my heart pounding with each discovery. 2 first-class airline tickets on Alaska Airlines. A receipt from Morton's Steakhouse for $300. Spa services at the hotel for $600. The final piece of evidence made my blood run cold. A credit card statement showing a charge for Madison graduation celebration package, totaling $8,000 at some luxury event planning company in Seattle. They had not struggled to afford my ticket. They had deliberately excluded me from an elaborate celebration while lying about their financial situation. But it got worse. I found text message screenshots that Mom had apparently printed out, probably by accident, mixed in with the receipts. The messages were between Mom and Madison, dated the week before graduation. Madison, did you tell Evangeline about the surprise party you planned? Mom, no, and we are not going to. This weekend is about celebrating you, sweetheart. Evangeline would just make everything about herself somehow. You know how she gets when she is not the center of attention. Madison, maybe we should invite her, though. She is my sister. Mom, trust me, you will have a much better time without her there. Besides, she would probably complain about the expenses anyway. Some people just bring negative energy to celebrations. I read those messages 3 times before their meaning fully sank in. This was not about money. This was about deliberately excluding me from my own sister's milestone because my mother had convinced Madison I would somehow ruin her special day. The betrayal cut deeper than any romantic breakup I had ever experienced. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, yet they had orchestrated an elaborate lie to justify leaving me behind while they celebrated without me. I spent the next week in a haze of hurt and disbelief. Every family gathering, every expression of love, every moment I had cherished, now felt tainted by the possibility of hidden agendas and secret conversations about my unworthiness. But hurt has a way of transforming into something else when you give it time to breathe. Mine transformed into determination. I started keeping detailed records of every interaction with my family members. I began paying closer attention to the subtle dynamics I had previously overlooked. What I discovered was a pattern of financial manipulation and emotional favoritism that stretched back years. The emergency loan I had given Dad 6 months earlier. He had used it to buy Madison a new car as a law school graduation gift. The family vacation, I was told, was canceled due to budget constraints. They had gone without me posting carefully cropped photos that excluded any evidence of their trip. I realized I had been systematically excluded from family celebrations and financial discussions while being treated as an on-demand ATM whenever they needed money. The graduation incident was not an isolated event, but rather the most blatant example of a long-standing pattern. The turning point came during Madison's housewarming party 2 months later. I had not been invited to this event either, but I learned about it through a mutual friend who assumed I would be attending. The casual way she mentioned it, "Oh, are you excited about Madison's party this weekend?" made it clear that my exclusion was not some oversight, but another deliberate choice. This time I was ready. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering evidence and planning my approach. I knew that direct confrontation would only result in gaslighting and deflection tactics my family had perfected over the years. Instead, I needed public accountability. I drove to Madison's new house on the evening of her housewarming party, arriving just as the celebration was in full swing. The driveway was packed with cars, and through the windows I could see dozens of people laughing and socializing. Extended family members, family friends, colleagues, everyone except me. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Madison answered, her face going pale when she saw me standing there. "Evangeline, what are you doing here?" Her voice carried a mixture of surprise and something that looked like guilt. "I brought you a housewarming gift," I said, holding up a beautifully wrapped package. I thought it was strange that I did not receive an invitation, but I figured it must have gotten lost in the mail. Behind Madison, I could see Mom approaching, her expression shifting rapidly from confusion to alarm as she recognized the potential for public embarrassment. "Evangeline, honey, we thought you were working this weekend," Mom said, moving to stand beside Madison in what felt like a protective formation. "No, I am completely free. In fact, I cleared my schedule specifically for family time." I smiled warmly, making it impossible for them to turn me away without appearing openly hostile in front of their guests. Madison had no choice but to invite me in. As I entered the crowded living room, I was greeted by surprised relatives and family friends who had not expected to see me there. Their reactions told me everything I needed to know about how my absence had been explained. "Evangeline," Aunt Rebecca approached with genuine enthusiasm. "I thought you were traveling for work this month. Your mother said you had some big project that was keeping you busy." "No, I have been in town this whole time," I replied, maintaining my pleasant demeanor while making mental notes. I think there might have been some miscommunication. I spent the first hour of the party being warmly welcomed by people who clearly had no idea I had been deliberately excluded. Their genuine affection and surprise at seeing me provided stark contrast to the nervous energy radiating from Mom and Madison. Then I began my carefully orchestrated revelation. During a natural lull in conversation, I approached the group gathered around Madison's new dining table, where she was showing off photos from various recent family events. "Oh, these are lovely photos from your graduation," I said, picking up several pictures from the Seattle trip. "The hotel looks incredible. The Fairmont Olympic Rite, I looked it up after Mom told me about your celebration." Madison froze, the color draining from her face. "You know," I continued conversationally, "Mom told me they could only afford to send one family member to your graduation. I was so impressed by your thoughtfulness, Madison insisting that Mom should be the one to attend instead of me. Such a sacrifice for the family budget. Aunt Rebecca looked confused. But did not your parents both go? I saw photos of your dad at the ceremony too. They did both go, I confirmed, my voice remaining light and curious, along with quite an elaborate celebration from what I can see in these photos. I was just confused about the budget constraints Mom mentioned. The room had grown notably quieter, with several relatives now paying attention to our conversation. Mom appeared at my elbow, her smile tight and artificial. "Evangeline, why do not we talk privately?" she said, attempting to guide me away from the group. "Oh, we can talk here," I replied cheerfully. "I actually brought some photos to share too." I pulled out my phone and began showing the screenshots of the receipts and text messages I had discovered. I found these papers accidentally when I was helping Dad in his office. I was so relieved to see you had not actually experienced financial hardship. These receipts show quite a wonderful celebration indeed. I watched as the truth spread across the faces of everyone looking at my phone. $8,000 for a graduation celebration. $4,000 for a hotel suite. First-class flights. The mathematics of their deception became undeniable, but the real shock came when I showed the text message screenshots. I was most interested in these text conversations between Mom and Madison. I said, my voice remaining calm and measured. They really helped me understand the decision-making process behind my exclusion from the celebration. Aunt Rebecca read the messages aloud, her voice growing more horrified with each word. The room fell into stunned silence as the content of those messages sank in. The casual cruelty, the assumption that I would somehow ruin Madison's special day, the deliberate orchestration of my exclusion. Mom's face had gone from pale to red to a sickly green color. Madison was staring at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "So, you see," I concluded, "it was not about money at all. It was about family values and priorities. I just wanted everyone to understand the real situation." The confrontation that followed was everything I had expected and more. Mom tried to downplay the situation, claiming the messages were taken out of context. Madison attempted to apologize while simultaneously justifying their actions. Dad, when summoned from the backyard, looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. But the damage was done. The family, friends, and relatives who had witnessed this revelation were not buying the excuses and explanations. The evidence was too clear, the deception too calculated, and the cruelty too obvious. Uncle Gary, Dad's brother, was the first to speak up. "This is absolutely unacceptable," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Family does not treat family this way." Cousin Janet, who had always been close to our family, looked absolutely disgusted. "Those text messages. How could you write those things about your own daughter?" The party essentially ended at that moment. People began making polite excuses and leaving, but not before expressing their support for me and their disappointment in Mom and Madison's behavior. I had achieved exactly what I had hoped for: public accountability and consequences for their actions. The aftermath of Madison's housewarming party created ripple effects throughout our extended family and social circle that I had not fully anticipated. Within days, I began receiving phone calls and text messages from relatives and family friends expressing their support and sharing their own experiences with Mom's manipulative behavior. Aunt Rebecca was the first to reach out. She called me the morning after the party, her voice filled with a mixture of anger and concern. "Evangeline, I have been thinking about last night all evening and I needed to talk to you," she began. "What your mother did was absolutely wrong, but I also need to apologize to you." "You do not have anything to apologize for," I assured her. "But I do," she insisted. "There have been other times when you were mysteriously absent from family events, and I just accepted whatever explanation your mother provided. I should have questioned it. I should have reached out to you directly." "Omi, anbo taing." This conversation opened floodgates I had not expected. Aunt Rebecca began recounting specific instances over the past several years when my absence from family gatherings had been explained away with various excuses. work commitments, personal issues, last-minute emergencies, all fabrications designed to justify my systematic exclusion. "The 4th of July barbecue last year," she said. "Your mother said you had come down with food poisoning. But now I am wondering if you were ever even invited." I was not invited. I had spent that holiday alone in my apartment, believing my family was having a small, informal gathering that did not require my presence. "Your cousin David's wedding shower 6 months ago. She said you were dealing with a personal crisis and needed space." Another lie. I had been completely available and would have loved to attend. The pattern was becoming clear, not just to me, but to extended family members who had previously accepted Mom's explanations without question. Aunt Rebecca promised to start including me directly in family communications going forward, bypassing Mom's editorial control over my social calendar. Uncle Gary called next, and his conversation took a more serious tone. "Evangeline, I need to tell you something that might be difficult to hear," he began. "Your father asked me for a loan 2 months ago. He said it was for emergency home repairs after some storm damage." My heart sank. I knew where this was heading. "I gave him $3,000, Uncle Gary continued. "But yesterday, after seeing those receipts you shared, I drove by your parents' house. There is no storm damage, Evangeline. The house looks perfectly fine." Another financial deception, another lie to fund their exclusive celebrations while portraying themselves as struggling. But Uncle Gary was not finished. "I talked to your Aunt Patricia this morning. She lent your parents money last month, too. Same story about emergency expenses. And your cousin Mike mentioned that your dad hit him up for cash a few weeks ago." The scope of their financial manipulation was becoming clear. They had been systematically borrowing money from various family members while using some of those funds to finance expensive celebrations that deliberately excluded me. The audacity was breathtaking. Uncle Gary had already spoken with several other family members, and they were organizing a family meeting to address the pattern of deception and financial manipulation. This was escalating beyond my original plan for simple public accountability. "We want you there, of course," Uncle Gary said. "But we also want you to know that regardless of how your parents respond, you have family support. Real family support." The family meeting was scheduled for the following Sunday at Uncle Gary's house. In the days leading up to it, I received calls from cousins, aunts, and uncles expressing similar sentiments. People were sharing stories about times they had been asked for money under false pretenses about family events, where my absence had been explained with increasingly creative excuses about feelings of manipulation and deception they had previously ignored. Cousin Janet called to tell me about a conversation she had had with Madison's best friend, who had mentioned that Madison felt terrible about the graduation situation, but was afraid to go against Mom's wishes. This information suggested that Madison might be as much a victim of Mom's manipulation as I was, albeit a more willing one. Madison's friend said your mom has always played favorites, but it has gotten much worse over the past few years, Janet explained. She said Madison knows it is wrong but feels trapped between loyalty to your mom and doing the right thing. This insight complicated my feelings about the situation. While I remained hurt by Madison's participation in my exclusion, I began to see her as someone who had been manipulated into complicity, rather than the primary architect of the deception. The most surprising call came from Mrs. Patterson, our longtime next-door neighbor. "Evangeline, dear, I hope you do not mind me reaching out," she said in her gentle voice. "I heard about what happened at Madison's party through the neighborhood network, and I felt I needed to share something with you." Mrs. Patterson proceeded to tell me about numerous occasions when she had seen my parents leaving for what appeared to be family trips or celebrations, often with luggage and gifts, while I was obviously not present. She had always assumed I was busy with work or had chosen not to attend. But after hearing about this graduation situation, she said, "I started thinking about all those times I asked your mother how you were doing, and she would make comments about how you were going through a difficult phase or were too busy with your career to prioritize family." Mrs. Patterson's observations provided an outside perspective that confirmed the systematic nature of my exclusion. This was not occasional family drama, but a sustained campaign to isolate me from family connections while maintaining a facade of caring concern. By the time Sunday arrived, I felt simultaneously supported by my extended family and overwhelmed by the scope of deception that was being revealed. The family meeting at Uncle Gary's house included 12 relatives, all of whom had been affected by Mom and Dad's financial manipulation or had witnessed questionable behavior regarding my treatment. Mom and Dad arrived looking defensive and prepared for battle. Madison came separately, appearing nervous and uncertain. The atmosphere in Uncle Gary's living room was tense, but determined. Uncle Gary took the lead, presenting the collective concerns in a measured but firm tone. "We are here because a pattern of deception and manipulation has come to light that affects our entire family," he began. "This is not about taking sides or creating drama. This is about accountability and ensuring our family operates with honesty and integrity." He outlined the financial deceptions first: the multiple loans obtained under false pretenses, the elaborate celebrations funded while claiming financial hardship, the systematic exclusion of one family member while portraying it as unfortunate necessity rather than deliberate choice. Mom's response was predictably defensive. She accused the family of ganging up on her, claimed her actions were misunderstood, and attempted to redirect blame onto me for creating drama by sharing private family matters publicly. "Evangeline has always been overly sensitive," she said, her voice rising with emotion. "She takes everything personally and cannot handle when attention is focused on someone else. We were trying to protect Madison's special moments from being overshadowed." But the family was not buying these explanations. Too much evidence existed. Too many people had been deceived. Too many inconsistencies had been exposed. Aunt Patricia, who had lent Dad money for supposed emergency car repairs, stood up with a folder full of bank statements and receipts. "These financial records show exactly where our loan money went," she announced. "Expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, shopping sprees. Meanwhile, you told us you were struggling to pay for basic necessities." The room erupted into heated discussion as family members shared their own experiences with Mom and Dad's financial manipulation. The scope of deception was staggering, involving thousands of dollars borrowed under false pretenses over several months. Madison finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want everyone to know that I feel terrible about what happened with Evangeline and my graduation," she said, tears flowing down her cheeks. "I know it was wrong, but Mom convinced me that Evangeline would somehow make the weekend about herself, and I believed her because I wanted everything to be perfect." This admission of manipulation provided another piece of the puzzle. Mom had not just excluded me. She had systematically poisoned Madison's perception of me to ensure her compliance with the exclusion. The meeting concluded with clear consequences. The extended family would no longer provide financial assistance to my parents without verification of actual need and transparent accounting of how funds would be used. Family events would be organized with direct communication to all family members, bypassing Mom's editorial control. And there would be a family-wide acknowledgement that systematic exclusion and manipulation were unacceptable behaviors that would not be tolerated. But as I drove home from Uncle Gary's house, I knew this was far from over. Mom's defensive reactions and refusal to take genuine accountability suggested that more dramatic consequences would be necessary before real change could occur. I was right to be cautious. Within days of the family meeting, I learned that Mom had been working behind the scenes to undermine the new family communication protocols and rebuild her control over family dynamics. The war for family integrity was just beginning, and I was about to discover that some allies could not be trusted. 3 weeks after this family meeting, I thought we had achieved real progress toward accountability and change. The new communication protocols seemed to be working with several family members, including me directly in event planning and family updates. Uncle Gary had even started a group chat that bypassed Mom's traditional role as family information coordinator. Then Madison called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice heavy with what sounded like genuine remorse. "Evangeline, I need to talk to you," she said. I have been doing a lot of thinking since the family meeting, and I realize how wrong I was about everything. I want to make this right between us." Her words felt like a balm to wounds that had been festering for months. Despite everything that had happened, Madison was still my sister, and part of me desperately wanted to rebuild our relationship. "I would like that," I told her honestly. "I miss having you in my life." "Could we meet for lunch this weekend? Just the two of us. I want to explain some things and maybe start fresh." We arranged to meet at a quiet restaurant downtown, away from family territory and prying eyes. I spent the days leading up to our lunch feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe something positive could emerge from this painful situation after all. Madison arrived looking nervous but determined. She immediately launched into what seemed like a prepared speech about recognizing Mom's manipulation, understanding how wrong the graduation exclusion had been, and wanting to rebuild our sisterly bond. "I realize now that Mom has been playing us against each other for years," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "She would make comments about you being jealous of my achievements or suggest that you were trying to upstage me at family events. I see now that she was manufacturing conflict between us." This revelation made perfect sense and aligned with everything I had discovered about Mom's manipulative patterns. I felt my guard lowering as Madison continued. "I want us to be close again," she said. "I want us to plan family events together, support each other, and not let Mom control our relationship anymore." We spent 2 hours talking through years of manufactured conflicts and misunderstandings. Madison shared examples of times Mom had warned her about my supposed jealousy or attention-seeking behavior, while I explained the systematic exclusions and financial deceptions I had uncovered. By the end of lunch, I felt like we were finally rebuilding the sisterly connection that had been damaged by years of manipulation. "There is something else," Madison said as we prepared to leave. "I think Mom is planning something. She has been making phone calls and having private conversations with certain family members. I think she is trying to undermine the new family communication system Uncle Gary set up." This information alarmed me, but also reinforced my growing trust in Madison. She was providing intelligence about Mom's counter strategies, positioning herself as an ally in the fight for family accountability. "I want to help you stop her," Madison continued, "but I think we need to be strategic about it. If we can catch her in the act of trying to manipulate family members or exclude you from something, we will have proof that she has not changed at all." Over the following weeks, Madison and I began working together to monitor Mom's activities and communications. She would report back to me about conversations and plans she overheard while I continued documenting any instances of exclusion or financial deception. Madison told me about Mom's plan to organize a surprise birthday party for Dad without including me in the planning or invitation process. She described overhearing Mom on phone calls with certain relatives trying to convince them that the family meeting had been an overreaction and that I was being vindictive and dramatic. "She is telling people that you manipulated everyone at Uncle Gary's house," Madison reported. "She says you are trying to turn the family against her because you are jealous of our close relationship." This intelligence felt valuable and confirmed my suspicions that Mom was not accepting the new accountability measures. Madison and I developed a plan to gather evidence of Mom's continued manipulation that we could present to the extended family. But something felt off. Madison's reports became increasingly detailed and dramatic. She claimed to have overheard elaborate schemes and vindictive conversations that seemed almost too convenient. When I asked for specifics or suggested ways to document these conversations, Madison always had reasons why evidence could not be gathered. "Mom is too smart," she would say. "She only says these things when she thinks no one is listening, and she would deny everything if confronted." The turning point came when Madison told me about Mom's alleged plan to sabotage my relationship with my boyfriend Jake by spreading rumors about my mental stability and vindictive nature. She said she is going to call Jake and tell him you have been obsessed with family drama and that you might need professional help, Madison reported with apparent concern. "She wants to isolate you from everyone who supports you." This claim seemed extreme even for Mom, but it triggered my deepest fears about being isolated and having my sanity questioned. I immediately called Jake to warn him about Mom's supposed plan. Jake's response was not what I expected. "Evangeline, that is really strange," he said slowly. "Your mom actually did call me yesterday, but the conversation was nothing like what Madison described." My blood ran cold. "What did she say?" I asked, dreading the answer. "She seemed really worried about you," Jake explained. "She said you had been under a lot of stress lately, and that Madison was concerned you might be having some kind of breakdown. She asked if I had noticed any changes in your behavior, or if you had been saying concerning things about the family." The room began spinning around me as the truth hit like a physical blow. Madison had not been reporting Mom's schemes to me. She had been reporting my plans and concerns to Mom, who was then using that information to get ahead of my actions and control the narrative. "Jake, what exactly did you tell her?" I managed to ask. "I told her I had not noticed anything concerning, but that you had mentioned some family conflicts recently. I probably should have talked to you about the call, but it seemed like she was genuinely worried about you." After hanging up with Jake, I sat in stunned silence as the scope of Madison's betrayal became clear. She had positioned herself as my ally and confidant specifically to gather intelligence about my plans and strategies. Every piece of information I had shared with her had been relayed back to Mom, allowing them to stay one step ahead of my efforts to expose their behavior. The lunch conversations, the emotional reconciliation, the promises of sisterly solidarity, all of it had been an elaborate manipulation designed to neutralize me as a threat to their established patterns of deception and control. I felt more isolated and betrayed than ever before. Not only had my original family excluded and deceived me, but they had manipulated me into trusting someone who was actively working against me. The alliance I thought I had built with Madison was actually a trap that had compromised every strategy I had developed. Mom and Madison had outmaneuvered me completely, and now they had inside information about my support systems, my documentation methods, and my emotional vulnerabilities. I had never felt more alone or defeated in my life. But sometimes the deepest defeats create the conditions for the most complete victories. I was about to discover that Mom and Madison had made a critical error in their manipulative strategy, and that error would ultimately lead to their complete exposure and downfall. The discovery of Madison's betrayal left me reeling for several days. I felt emotionally devastated, but also strategically defeated. How could I fight against people who were willing to manipulate trust and family bonds so ruthlessly? How could I expose the truth when my own sister was actively sabotaging my efforts? The answer came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door on a Thursday evening holding a manila envelope and wearing an expression of determined concern. "Evangeline, dear, I hope you do not mind the intrusion," she began, "but I have something I think you need to see." She handed me the envelope, which contained printed copies of text messages and several photographs taken from her kitchen window, which had a clear view of my parents' driveway and front yard. "I have been documenting things since our conversation about your family situation," she explained. "At my age, you learn to pay attention to patterns and inconsistencies. What I discovered might be helpful to you." The text messages were screenshots from her daughter's phone. Mrs. Patterson's daughter worked at the bank where my parents had their primary accounts, and while she could not share specific account information due to privacy regulations, she had noticed some concerning patterns in their banking behavior that she felt comfortable discussing in general terms. Multiple large cash withdrawals on the same days they claimed to family members that they were experiencing financial emergencies, Mrs. Patterson explained. Deposits from various family members followed immediately by luxury purchases and travel bookings. But the photographs were even more damaging evidence. Mrs. Patterson had been systematically documenting the comings and goings at my parents' house over the past 2 months. Her photos showed expensive deliveries, new purchases being unloaded from luxury vehicles, and clear evidence of the lifestyle improvements that contradicted their claims of financial hardship. This photograph was taken the day after your father borrowed money from your Uncle Gary for supposed emergency home repairs, she said, pointing to an image of a new outdoor furniture set being delivered. This one shows the landscaping crew they hired the same week they told your Aunt Patricia they could not afford their water bill. The documentation was meticulous and undeniable. Mrs. Patterson had created a timeline that correlated their requests for financial help with evidence of luxury spending, creating a clear pattern of systematic deception. But there is more, she continued, pulling out another set of photographs. These were taken yesterday morning. The photos showed Madison's car in my parents' driveway at 7 in the morning, followed by images of Madison and Mom sitting at the kitchen table, clearly engaged in intense conversation. Additional photos showed them reviewing documents and pointing at what appeared to be printed text messages. I became suspicious when I saw Madison visiting so early and staying for hours, Mrs. Patterson explained. Young people do not usually have lengthy morning visits with their parents unless something significant is happening. The implications were clear. Madison had not been covertly reporting my activities to Mom. They had been actively collaborating in their strategy to isolate and manipulate me. The evidence suggested regular planning sessions and coordinated deception. Mrs. Patterson had one more surprise for me. I took the liberty of sharing these findings with your Uncle Gary, she said. I hope you do not mind, but I felt the situation required adult intervention from someone with your best interests at heart. Uncle Gary had apparently been conducting his own investigation after becoming suspicious about Mom and Dad's defensive reactions at the family meeting. Mrs. Patterson's evidence had confirmed his suspicions and motivated him to take more aggressive action. He asked me to tell you about a family gathering he is planning for this Sunday, Mrs. Patterson continued. But this time your parents and Madison will not know about it in advance. He wants to present all the evidence we have gathered and make some final decisions about how to handle their behavior. The secret family meeting took place at Aunt Patricia's house with attendance limited to extended family members who had been directly affected by Mom and Dad's financial manipulation. Uncle Gary had spent the week gathering additional evidence and testimonies from family members who had been deceived. The documentation was overwhelming. Bank records showing the pattern of borrowing and spending. Receipts proving luxury purchases made immediately after claiming financial emergencies. Photographs demonstrating their actual lifestyle versus their claimed circumstances. And Mrs. Patterson's surveillance evidence showing the coordination between Mom and Madison. But Uncle Gary had uncovered something even more damaging. I hired a private investigator to look into their financial situation, he announced to the gathered family members. What we discovered goes beyond simple manipulation. This appears to be systematic fraud. The private investigator had uncovered evidence that Mom and Dad had been using fabricated emergencies and falsified documents to obtain money from multiple family members simultaneously. They had created fake medical bills, forged contractor estimates, and invented crisis situations to justify their requests for financial assistance. The total amount borrowed under false pretenses exceeds $15,000, Uncle Gary reported. This is not family drama. This is criminal behavior. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. We were not dealing with manipulative relatives who played favorites or excluded family members from social events. We were dealing with people who had systematically defrauded their own family members while using the funds to finance exclusive celebrations and luxury lifestyles. Aunt Rebecca, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. I think we need to consider legal action, she said firmly. This level of deception and financial fraud cannot be addressed through family meetings and communication protocols. They have stolen money from us while manipulating our emotions and family bonds. The consensus in the room was clear. The family had moved beyond trying to repair relationships or establish accountability through internal measures. Mom and Dad's behavior constituted fraud, and Madison's active participation in the deception made her complicit in their crimes. Uncle Gary had already consulted with an attorney about the legal options available to the family members who had been defrauded. The evidence was strong enough to support both civil and criminal charges if the family chose to pursue legal action. But before we make any legal decisions, Uncle Gary said, we are going to give them one final opportunity to confess their behavior, return the money they obtained fraudulently, and accept genuine accountability for their actions. The confrontation was scheduled for the following weekend. Mom, Dad, and Madison would be invited to a family dinner under the pretense of celebrating Dad's upcoming birthday. They would be presented with all the evidence we had gathered and given the choice between voluntary accountability and legal consequences. Evangeline, Uncle Gary said as the meeting concluded, I want you to know that regardless of how they respond, you have a family who supports you. We failed to protect you from their manipulation, but we will not fail to ensure you receive justice for their deception. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely hopeful. The isolation and betrayal I had experienced were being replaced by authentic family support and concrete action toward accountability. Mom and Madison had underestimated the intelligence and integrity of our extended family, and their manipulative strategies were about to backfire spectacularly. The final confrontation took place on a crisp Sunday afternoon in October at Uncle Gary's house. Mom, Dad, and Madison arrived expecting a birthday celebration for Dad, bringing gifts and wearing their most charming smiles. They had no idea that 12 family members were gathered not to celebrate, but to deliver an ultimatum backed by overwhelming evidence of their fraudulent behavior. Uncle Gary had arranged the living room like a courtroom with chairs arranged in a semicircle facing 3 seats obviously designated for the accused. A table held folders full of evidence, bank records, receipts, photographs, text message screenshots, and the private investigator's report. Mom's confident demeanor evaporated the moment she walked into the room and saw the arrangement. Dad looked around nervously while Madison's face went pale as she recognized that their carefully constructed web of lies was about to collapse. Please have a seat, Uncle Gary said formally. We have some family business to discuss. He began by presenting the evidence systematically, starting with the financial fraud, the fake medical bills used to obtain emergency loans, the forged contractor estimates for non-existent home repairs, the fabricated crisis situations designed to manipulate family members into providing money that was immediately spent on luxury items and exclusive celebrations. The total amount obtained through fraudulent means is $15,400, Uncle Gary announced. Money taken from family members who trusted you and wanted to help during what they believed were genuine emergencies. Mom tried to interrupt with explanations and justifications, but Uncle Gary continued relentlessly. We also have evidence of systematic exclusion and emotional manipulation designed to isolate Evangeline from family relationships while maintaining access to her financial resources when needed. Mrs. Patterson's surveillance photographs were particularly damaging, showing the coordination between Mom and Madison in planning their deceptive strategies. The images of their morning planning sessions combined with the timeline of Madison's false reports to me about Mom's behavior painted a clear picture of calculated conspiracy. Madison, Uncle Gary said, turning to address her directly. You systematically betrayed your sister's trust by pretending to reconcile with her while actually gathering intelligence to help your mother continue manipulating family dynamics. Madison began crying, but her tears felt calculated rather than genuine. I never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. Mom convinced me that Evangeline was trying to destroy our family, and I thought I was protecting everyone. But Uncle Gary was not moved by her performance. These text messages between you and your mother showed detailed planning of deceptive strategies, he said, displaying printouts of conversations Mrs. Patterson had obtained through her daughter's investigation. You actively participated in financial fraud and emotional manipulation for months. The evidence was so overwhelming that even Mom's usual deflection tactics could not create reasonable doubt. The paper trail was too clear, the pattern too obvious, and the coordination too well documented. Dad, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke up. What do you want from us? He asked quietly, his voice devoid of his usual bravado. We want full restitution of the money obtained through fraud, Uncle Gary replied. We want public acknowledgement of your behavior and genuine apologies to the family members you deceived. And we want binding agreements that this pattern of manipulation and exclusion will never happen again. And if we refuse? Mom asked, her voice tight with defensive anger. Then we proceed with civil and criminal legal action for fraud, theft by deception, and conspiracy. Aunt Patricia answered. We have already consulted with attorneys and have been advised that the evidence supports prosecution. The room fell silent as the weight of consequences settled over them. This was no longer family drama that could be explained away or forgotten over time. This was documented criminal behavior with clear legal remedies. Mom looked around the room, searching for allies or sympathy, but found only faces filled with disappointment and determination. The family members she had manipulated and deceived were united in their demand for accountability. We need time to think about this, she said finally. You have until tomorrow at noon, Uncle Gary responded. After that, we file police reports and begin civil proceedings. The next 24 hours felt like the longest day of my life. I spent the time reflecting on the journey from discovering those hotel receipts in Dad's office to sitting in Uncle Gary's living room, watching my family of origin face the consequences of their choices. Madison called me that evening, her voice small and defeated. Evangeline, I know I do not deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that I am sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. I appreciate that, I told her, but sorry does not undo the betrayal or repair the damage. I know, she whispered. I was weak and I let Mom manipulate me into hurting you. I was afraid of losing her approval, so I sacrificed our relationship instead. Her confession felt more authentic than anything she had said in months, but it was too late for reconciliation. Trust once broken so thoroughly could not be easily repaired. Mom and Dad called Uncle Gary before the deadline, agreeing to full restitution and public acknowledgement of their behavior. They would repay every dollar obtained through fraudulent means and provide written apologies to each family member they had deceived. In return, the family would not pursue criminal charges, though civil consequences would remain in place if they violated the agreement. The resolution brought me a sense of justice I had not expected to feel. But more importantly, it brought me something I had not realized I was missing: a genuine family built on honesty, integrity, and mutual support. The extended family members who had supported me throughout this ordeal became my chosen family. Uncle Gary and Aunt Patricia included me in every family gathering and major decision. Cousin Janet and I developed a close friendship based on shared values and authentic connection. Mrs. Patterson became like a grandmother to me, offering wisdom and support whenever I needed guidance. 6 months later, I received a package in the mail containing $15,400 in certified checks along with handwritten apologies from Mom, Dad, and Madison. The letters acknowledged their fraudulent behavior and expressed remorse for the pain they had caused. But by that time, I had already built a new life surrounded by people who valued honesty and treated me with genuine respect. The money was welcome, but the real victory was the family I had chosen and who had chosen me in return. Sometimes the greatest gift toxic family members can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can choose to build something better with people who share your values. Looking back now, I realize that loading my belongings into that U-Haul truck was not just about moving out of my apartment. It was about moving away from relationships built on manipulation and toward connections based on authenticity and mutual respect. The family I was born into taught me what I would not tolerate. The family I chose taught me what real love looks like. Have you ever had to choose between blood family and chosen family when toxic behavior made relationships impossible? I would love to hear your stories about standing up for yourself against family manipulation or finding your real tribe after experiencing betrayal. Drop a comment below sharing your experiences with family drama and karma. Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing justice when we least expect it, but most need it. If this story of family revenge and finding justice resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other people going through similar situations. Find this video. Subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family toxicity and building authentic relationships. And share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than manipulation and exclusion from people who are supposed to love them unconditionally. Thank you so much for being part of this journey with me. Remember that you always have the right to choose relationships that honor your worth and surround yourself with people who celebrate your presence instead of looking for reasons to exclude you. Sometimes the family you choose becomes more real than the family you were born into, and that is perfectly okay. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video with more stories about life justice and the power of choosing authenticity over toxicity.